Welcome to Twisted News. I'm Andrew, and today we have two stories about killers we thought you guys needed to hear about. The first covers a 1980 serial killer from Indiana with 20 plus victims, and then we dig into the Preppy Killer from NYC, who has committed a bunch of crimes including murder over the years, and yet he was just released from jail. Get ready for Scary Mysteries, Twisted News. Number 1. Remains at farm are from 1980 serial killer. In 1983, deep within the rusted remains of an abandoned farm in Indiana, the body of a teenage boy was discovered. It would go on to become an unsolved mystery that would persist for nearly 40 years, but finally, the body known only as Adam Doe would be identified as 16-year-old Keith Bibbs, and he was a casualty of infamous serial murderer Larry Eyler, aka the Highway Killer. The most insane aspect of Larry Eyler, beyond the manner in which he tortured and killed his victims, is the sheer number of killings he committed in such a short span of time. Between October of 1982 and August of 84, he killed 20 young men and had one attempted murder. This all happened around Illinois and Indiana. His victims were teenagers and men in their early 20s who were usually dumped in random fields or buried in isolated patches of farmland near highways and interstates. The reveal of Bibbs as one of these unfortunate souls was recently confirmed by the Newton County Coroner's Office, the DNA Doe Project, the Indiana State Police, and the Identify Indiana Initiative. The significant breakthrough comes after years of exhaustive efforts, and it brings closure to a case that has puzzled investigators and haunted families for decades. Newton County Coroner Scott McCord is now working to reunite Bibbs' remains with his family. Bibbs was the last of 4 victims found buried on the abandoned farm in '83 to be identified. The 3 others were Michael Bauer, John Bartlett, and John Brandenburg Jr. The process to identify Bibbs was challenging because his DNA was highly degraded, making it a painstaking process that took over 2 years just to construct a workable DNA profile. This complex forensic case was finally cracked open in January of 2023 when a team of investigative genetic genealogists made progress in untangling Bibbs's convoluted family tree. Ironically, another of Eyler's victims found on the same farm was also identified thanks to DNA technology back in April of 2021. John Brandenburg Jr., who was previously known only as Brad Doe, had been drugged and killed by Eyler. His identification was a collaboration between the Newton County, Indiana Coroner's Office, prosecutors, and the DNA Doe Project, who used GED Match, a public database of genetic samples, to cross-reference DNA samples from unidentified crime victims. Now, during his active years, Eyler left a path of pain and destruction behind him. He grew up in a volatile environment, rife with abuse, and was a closeted homosexual for most of his early life. However, his tormented past doesn't excuse the horrors he inflicted on his victims, many of whom were discarded near the U.S. interstate network. His sadistic practices involved coercing young men to come hang out with him, usually offering alcohol, which he would then lace with sedatives to subdue his victims. All his killings involved restraining his victims, and several of them were subjected to degrees of sadomasochism before being stabbed and/or slashed to death. Several of these individuals would then be disemboweled. Despite his violent spree, Eyler managed to evade justice for a time due to a lack of evidence. He was first arrested in 1983, but a judge ruled his detention illegal, leading to his release in '84. His final victim, Danny Bridges, was murdered later that year in Eyler's Chicago apartment. The discovery of Bridges' remains led to Eyler's arrest, trial, and eventual death sentence. Eyler didn't even spend a decade behind bars, though. He died in prison in 1994 at the age of 41 due to age-related complications. His heinous crimes continue to haunt the memories of his victims' families and the law enforcement officers who worked tirelessly to bring him to justice. And now, with the identification of Keith Bibbs, another chapter in the grisly tale of the highway killer is closed, bringing a semblance of peace to this long and twisted story. Number 2. NYC Preppy Killer released again. Robert Chambers, known infamously as the Preppy Killer, has been freed from jail recently at the age of 56, more than 3 decades after his heinous act of brutality where he strangled a teenage girl in the heart of New York City's Central Park. It was the summer of 1986 when 18-year-old Jennifer Levine and 19-year-old Chambers first crossed paths. The two hung out in the same high society circle that painted the town red at coveted venues like Studio 54 and the ill-fated Dorian's Red Ham Bar on East 84th Street, which still is up and running today. Levine, a college-bound beauty, was attracted to the charismatic Chambers, who was known as a ladies' man as well as an ardent drug user and dealer and a petty thief. Despite the red flags, though, she was into him. On the warm summer evening of August 26 that year, in the early hours of the morning, Levine once again confessed her deep feelings for Chambers inside Dorian's. And what should have been a romantic encounter then turned deadly when Chambers led her to Central Park, promising intimacy near the Metropolitan Museum of Art. For reasons still unknown, Chambers' demeanor turned violent once they found their secluded area. And what ensued was a terrifying 3-minute struggle as Chambers strangled Levine, her nails desperately clawing at him. He viciously beat her and smothered her with his denim jacket before fleeing the crime scene. Chilling discovery was then made by a passing bicyclist. 911 call led authorities to Levine's battered body, her miniskirt arranged in a grotesque display, blouse and bra pushed up. Investigators zeroed in on Chambers as a prime suspect fairly quickly, with the deep scratches on his face and neck matching the bruising on Levine's hands. After a series of lies, he would go on to finally admit to killing the girl, twisting the narrative to claim it occurred during a bout of rough but consensual intimacy. The legal proceedings concluded with a plea deal. Chambers pleaded guilty to manslaughter and received a 5 to 15-year sentence. In 2003, he was released after serving the maximum sentence. The law caught up with him 2 years later on a misdemeanor drug charge, resulting in a 90-day sentence. But 2008 saw him return to the cold confines of a prison cell when his cocaine and heroin operation, run in collaboration with his girlfriend, Sean Koval, was discovered. But now, once again, this gem of a guy is back on the streets on parole, raising questions about our justice system once again. Will he do something bad and end up in jail again, or live a nice quiet life in the suburbs of NYC? Only time will tell. So there were 2 of the most scary and strange news stories we have for you guys this week. If you want more uncensored videos and other perks for free, go check out the 7-day free trial over at patreon.com/scarymysteries. There's a huge library you can binge plus a new video each week. We really appreciate any and all support. Thanks for tuning in today, guys. I'll see you soon.